Hi everyone, so now we're going to be talking about surface areas and volumes of prisms and cylinders. Now, cylinders are considered a prism. A prism is basically if I take a shape and make it 3D or pull up on it and make it a 3D shape. Think about if you had like a triangle and then on a table and then you just took the triangle and pulled it up and it created, it's called a triangular prism. So basically like almost like a block that's in the shape of a triangle. So cylinders are basically a circular prism, but we just give them a fancy name. So the formula for a surface area of a prism is 2 times capital B, where capital B stands for the area of the base. Now, the area of the base, there's different sides on every prism, but the base, the side of the base would be the shape that isn't a rectangle. Most of these shapes are rectangles if we look at all the sides, but the area of the base, or this capital B, is looking for the area that, or the shape that's not a triangle. And I'll show you that in the examples. And then plus P, which stands for the perimeter of the base, times H, which is the height. And the surface area for a cylinder is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h, where r stands for the radius and h stands for the height. This is just a fancy way of saying the 2b plus ph. It just gets a almost like a more complicated formula, because that way we don't have to go and find the area of the base. It's already put into the formula. We don't have to find the perimeter of the base. It's already put into the formula. So the surface area, if you remember, is like all the stuff that creates the outside of the box or the outside of the shape. And then the volumes are everything on the inside of the shape. So the volume for a prism is B times H, where B stands for the area of the base. And then the volume for a cylinder is pi r squared H. Again, that's just a fancy way of saying B times H. It just gets its own special formula. Okay, let's start going through some of these questions. So the first question, it's asking us to find the surface area. And it's a cylinder. We know it's a cylinder because it has those circular bases. So we're going to say that the surface area is equal to 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. And we're going to replace the r with the radius of the circle. And remember, the radius of the circle is when we're going from basically the middle of the circle to the edge. It already gave us the radius as 3. So we're going to say that the surface area, in fact, let me draw. This is your radius right here, and then this is your height. Now, the height stands for the height of the prism, or how tall it goes. So we would have 2 pi, but instead of having r, I'm going to put 3 in there. We don't put 3 feet in there because our calculator doesn't handle units well, but when we get done with when we get our answer, we'll put units back onto it. And then plus 2 pi r, which we know is 3, times my height of the prism, which is 9. All right, so now let's plug that into the calculator. We have 2 pi times 3 squared plus 2 pi times 3 times 9. And I end up with that the surface area is equal to 226.19. I rounded that to the nearest hundredth, especially when you're dealing with pi's. You're not going to get really pretty answers. That's totally okay. Just round to the nearest hundredth. And because this is a surface area, we still need to put units on it. So we're going to put feet, but because it's a surface area, we have to put feet squared because it's an area, and area is always squared. So there is my surface area for the cylinder. Okay, now let's go to the next question. So example 2 is a triangular prism. I know it's a triangular prism because it has a triangle on the top and the bottom. The rest of the sides of the shape are rectangles. And so this is considered a triangular prism, which means that when I find the area of the base, and when I find the perimeter of the base, I'm going to use that triangle as that. So let me write down the formula. We have that the surface area is equal to 2 times the area of the base plus the perimeter of the base times the height. So before I can really get started, I'm going to start by finding the area of the base. Now, this is a triangle, so we need to know the area for a triangle, and the area for a triangle is the area is equal to 1/2 base times height, where this base is the base of the triangle, not the base of the shape. It gets really confusing because I keep on using the word base, but this base, or the little b, stands for the base of the triangle. So if I kind of pull that triangle out, I'm going to just draw it right here. We would have this, and where this is 10, this is 8, and this is 6. So the base of my triangle is this guy right here at 6. And the height of my triangle is right there, that's 8. So I can say that my area is equal to 1/2 my base, which is 6, times my height, which is 8. I plug that into a calculator and I get 24. Now that would be 24 kilometers squared. We're in the middle of a formula. You don't necessarily need to write the answer, or write the units on that part of the answer, but I'm going to just so that you understand. So that's our capital B. We know that B is equal to 24. Now the other thing we need to do is find the perimeter of the base. The perimeter of the base is just adding all of the sides together from this triangle. So in this case, my perimeter would be 6 plus 8 plus 10, which also gives me 24. In this case, that would just be kilometers. When we're doing a perimeter, it's just adding the length, so it's not squaring anything, which means that it's just a length, it's just kilometers. Okay, now that we have all of that, we're gonna plug everything into my formula for surface area. And before we do that, I'm gonna move this guy down just so we have a little bit more space. Okay. Oh, sorry, one sec, I'm gonna move it over here. Okay, so now I'm gonna say that the surface area is equal to 2 times my area of the base. We decided that the big B would be 24, plus the perimeter of the base, which is also 24, times the height. Now the height is the height of the prism. So you gotta go back to the original picture and look at the height, which would be this 8 right here. So how tall, or what's the distance from the bottom triangle to the top triangle? That would be your height, which in this case is 8. Okay, so now let's plug all of that in to our calculator. So 2 times 24 plus 24 times 8, and we get that the surface area is equal to 240, and now we're going to put the units on. It would be kilometers squared, because it's an area, so it has to be squared. All right, so that's how we find surface areas. The cylinder is a little bit easier because you don't have to go through and find a bunch of other smaller portions of it, but it still works out, and you will have the formulas for all the different shapes as well on that cheat sheet. Okay, so now let's do example 3, but let's move this example down so we have some space to work. Okay, so for number 3, instead of finding our surface area, now we're gonna find our volumes. And so the formula for volume of a prism is the area of the base times the height. Now this base is a pentagon. It's a 5-sided shape, and we just call these polygons. If it's bigger than 4 sides, we're going to call it a polygon. So the area of this base for a polygon is the area is equal to 1/2 ASN, where A stands for the apothem, and the apothem is from the side to the center. It's kind of like a radius, but not a radius because it's not a circle, times S, which is the side length, times N, which is the number of sides. So in this case, we would have the area is equal to 1/2 my apothem, which is that 6.2, times S, which is our side length. Now we can see that our side length would be 9, and then N is the number of sides. This is a pentagon, it has 5 sides. All right, so let me plug that into my calculator, and I get 139.5. Okay, so that's just the area of the base. So for my volume, I would do the area of the base, which I just found is 139.5, times the height of the prism, which again is like the distance from the bottom pentagon to the top pentagon. In this case, that's 9. Okay, so now if I plug that in, I end up with that the volume is equal to 1,255.5, and that's in meters cubed because now it's a volume. All right, okay, one more, and this guy we're gonna find the volume for as well. So let me write down the volume formula. It's pi r squared h. So we need an r and an h. The h is this 10 right here. That's the height from circle to circle. and then your r is the radius, but they didn't give you a radius in this case, they gave you a diameter. So to find the radius, we say that the radius is equal to 1/2 the diameter, or the diameter divided by 2. And so the radius would be 1/2 times 16 in this case, which is 8. So I'm gonna just make that green so that we can kind of see the difference. Okay, so now let's just plug everything we have into our volume formula, which would be V is equal to pi times my r, which is 8, squared, times my height, which is 10. And then I can plug that into a calculator, and I would get 2010.62. Because it's a volume, we need to have a unit of cubic feet. Okay, and there we have it. So again, the cylinders are a little bit easier only because it's given you the equation flat out. You don't need to find any little mini equations. But in those prism ones where I'm asking you to find the area of the base or the perimeter of the base, I do give you the formulas for that on your cheat sheet. So there we have it, how to find surface areas and volumes of cylinders and prisms.